Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien here on the morning of Sunday, March 12th, 2023. Stand by for commentary. Well, today's commentary is Vice Presidency, a position you Americans don't understand, comprehend, know about, or any other thing. When they were doing the Constitution back in 1788, well, presidency, they were trying to find a thing, so they were basing it on, uh, the Doge over in Venice, or the Iroquois Confederation, which is most likely the one they used better, the Iroquois Confederation. Now, have you ever noticed that in the Iroquois Confederation, or even in Venice, you had a leader, a chief, and a doge? And of course, you had a second in command somewhere, but you didn't call them a vice chief, or vicious doge, vici doge, half doge, second doge, or whatever you want to call them in there in Venice. Well, they probably had one, but nobody ever remembers those. Or even in the Iroquois, vice chief, or second chief, yoo-hoo, yeah. Well, the Americans decided, well, we need somebody, and do we want the third in command, which is, who is that? Oh, the House Speaker! Oh boy, do we really want him to take over the presidency? Just have the president and go straight to House Speaker and President pro tem? No. So let's make it a vice president here. And, well, for the first couple of elections, the vice president, was the guy that finished second. Of course, he hates your guts because he's running against you, i.e. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, was a Federalist, and George Washington was a Virginian independent. He was not a Federalist, poor Georgie. Everybody considers him a Federalist. Oh boy, poor Georgie. Your Federalist was John Adams from Massachusetts, a pain in the eye. Oh yeah. So what do you put a pain in the eye? Well, law of unintended consequences put him in second place. Same with Thomas, yucky Republican Jefferson. Yeah. So he finished second in the election of 1896. Yeah. Okay. And then you had the election of 1800 with Aaron Burr. Oh, yeah. So he finished second. So they decided, hey, we can't have this mess here. So we'll have a ticket where you guys pick a guy that's going to be second in command for you. And at that time, you had differences in like Hamiltonians and Jeffersonians. Oh, yeah. Well, first you jettison out Aaron Burr. Yeah, so that's what they did. They jettison him out of there and try to put him in prison with charges of treason. Jefferson in that second term, he went after Burr with a Burr in the saddle, boy. Ooh-wee! And remember that he had also killed his opposition, which I don't think Jefferson liked that too much when he killed Alexander Hamilton. Where Burr was just a burr on people's side. Yeah. But anyway, they started from then on putting people that they could care less about and were painting a woo-woo to their parties in second place. And keeping them there for a long time. Okay? So nobody remembers vice presidents. Until 1840. when Tippy Canoe was running for president and he needed to find somebody. And the guy said, "Oh, well, this guy is a pain in the woo-woo, and we can't have him out there because he's going to outshine old Tippy, so we'll put him in with Tippy." And, well, we'll put him in the slogan, too. Tippy Canoe and Tyler, too. Yeah, but John Tyler was, oh, boy. Well, and you know what happens when you stick people where you don't want them and they're a pain in the neck. Well, 1840 came around, old Tippy Canoe decided to go for a 2.5-hour reign when he should have said, "I accept the presidency of the United States and let's go in and have some hot cider or tea, please. It's freezing. My kabooties out here." But he didn't do that. And 30 days later, he kicked the bucket. Yeah. So then you had 4 years of John Tyler. Oh, boy. So the 1841 to 45 was, yeah. And then you had an interesting president, John K. Polk. Yeah, well, he had the same problem. And his vice president, and neither one of them was good. So in the 1848 election, they had just finished the Mexican War, so they went with old Rough and Ready. But then they had, a guy they didn't like, and he was a good-looking guy, so they tell me. But as far as any sense in him, he didn't have any sense. His wife did, because she remodeled the White House. The White House was a trash by the time they got into the 1848 election when they went in there in March of 1849. Oh boy, that was a disaster of a White House. Woo-wee. Yeah, because of Jefferson a decade earlier. Oh yeah. And his hand-picked successor, which was a bad guy in his own right. Oh, Sandy Whiskers! Yeah, otherwise known as Martin Verburen. Oh, boy. Talk about vice presidents with bad things. Well, anyway. So, Rough and Ready got the vice presidency of Millard Fillmore. And you had tough issues coming up at that time. The Compromise of 1850. And, of course, Rough and Ready was a good president. He didn't want that. He knew that would cost a hot potato and would cost the Civil War to get in faster. Oh, yeah. Well, unfortunately for old Rough and Ready, the presidency was going to have some lousy presidents. And it started with his successor, Millard Fillmore, because poor Rough and Ready ate something that cost him indigestion, and he kicked a bucket in 1850. So, yeah. And then Millard Fillmore decided, hey, I love the Compromise of 1850. Yeah, so he signed it. And therefore, the Civil War was on for good there, okay? He left the presidency in 1853, and then you had a poor guy that should never have been there, Franklin Pierce. His vice president, you never heard of him, and he never had anything to do with anything because Franklin served his term. But Franklin, remember, him and his wife didn't see eye to eye, and he had lost all his sons. His latest one, Benny, was back in January of 1853. Where he was going into the inauguration into Washington for the inauguration in March, and he had just left, his train had just left the station, and a mile later, the car derailed, and him and his wife, well, they just got bruises, but his son Benny got crushed to death. That made Franklin Pierce a disaster for the rest of the presidency. He was already a disaster coming in. So when he left in 1857, you had Mr. Buchanan there, James Buchanan, which was a worse president than poor Franklin was, even worse than Millard Fillmore. He almost caused the Civil War, or war with the Mormons in 1857. Yeah, but he decided to go after Desiree, and he almost caused the Civil War there. But he caused the Civil War when Abraham Lincoln came in. Abraham Lincoln had a president, a vice president, and nobody remembers. But they do his second one in 1864 when he decided he needed to help. And he picked a Democrat. Oh boy, President Lincoln, what made you pick Andrew Johnson? He cost the United States 150 years of disaster. Andrew Johnson did, after President Lincoln got assassinated. And this is what I mean. You put people that you don't like in the second position because he's a Democrat and we need to get this thing going. Yeah. Well, it cost the country 150 years of hardship, and it's still costing them that. Yeah. So after, that, then the presidents came and went. The vice presidents, you didn't hear about them. Until 1880 when James A. Garfield, because he was a Civil War guy, and they put Chester Allen Arthur in there because they didn't know what to do with the poor guy. And Chester ended up to be one of the better vice presidents you've ever had. And you guys don't remember Chester Allen Arthur as a 20-something-year-old. He was an attorney who served a lady in New York, an African-American lady, the precursor to Rosa Parks, as far as getting up on the bus. And she got really humiliated, and he won the case, got her some money, and she became a very known person in New York. In fact, they just built a statue for her back in 2018. I believe there, if you look her up, you'll see her there. There's a statue they put up there. So you see, they didn't forget about her. But they didn't give her the recognition, not even the NAACP did, as far as they're giving Rosa Parks. I mean, to me, this lady in New York deserves better recognition than she's getting. Anyway, but Chester Allen Arthur was a good guy. And then we go, over there to William McKinley. And remember, in 1896, he was bought by the big guys because he's supposed to beat William Jennings Bryan, and you had a conglomeration of Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, and the rest of the big guys. Oh yeah, John Rockefeller. And they all in there, we gotta buy ourselves a president because they're going to kill us if we don't. And they did. And the guy that they put in the vice presidency because they didn't know what else to do him. They had to shut him up and they had to do something about him. Oh, Teddy Roosevelt became vice president. Well, this one crazy guy in 1901 decided, hey, I don't like this fat guy as president here. So, and boy, John McKinley was really fat. The only fatter guy in the White House was William Howard Taft. Yeah. But in 1901, he shot him. And the doctors took the bullets out, but they forgot that they got to clean the wounds, and they didn't. And poor William McKinley croaked based on the doctor's mistakes back in 1901. He could have survived on today's medication, but, that's the way it goes. Easy come, easy go. Yeah. So that put Teddy up there. Oh boy. So here comes Teddy and John Rockefeller. Boy, did he pay the price, didn't he? Woo-hoo. Yeah, John D. Rockefeller was on Teddy's crossbow there, or sights, and he went after him with a vengeance. Oh, big time. He forced old Mr. Rockefeller to break up Standard Oil. But what was funny is Teddy didn't realize that Rockefeller came out of there more richer than he went in. But Standard Oil was already all over the place. I mean, Standard Oil of Ohio, Standard Oil of California, Standard Oil of this, Standard Oil of that. And that happened to guys like GE and Edison, where you had all the Edison companies. They were split. You had Illinois Edison, Michigan Edison, Detroit Edison, all kinds of Edisons out there. And the one guy who didn't do this was Duke. And the Duke family decided, hey, let's have a Duke here, Duke there, Duke here, Duke there, Duke here, Duke there. And they did that. States, Dukes, each state had his own thing, so they didn't have to worry about a monopoly. And they found out they were more richer doing it that way than the other way. Well, but Teddy changed the world, and we're paying his price. Big time. That's what you get for putting a second banana in there. Then you did it again in 1944 when you put Mr. Harry S. Truman, give him hell, Harry, because you didn't like who he was. Plus, he was also bought by the mob, so they say, under Mr. Pendergast over in Missouri. Yeah. Oh, that was a fun thing back in the 1920s, Mr. Pendergast. Yes. Well, but Mr. Give him hell, Harry turned out to be different. And when he became president, well, you guys blame him for the atomic bombs, but he had no choice. What do you want? 270 or 70,000, 75,000, 140,000 Japanese versus a million Americans? You can understand his position. But what you didn't know, and he didn't know, was the effect of the nuclear bombs on the world. It was going to change it. He knew that. How bad it was going to be, he could not tell you. But up to his death in 1972, I bet you that Give him hell, Harry will tell you that that was the best decision. And for me, at the time, I would agree with giving hell, Harry. So you can't judge him by 21st century disaster politics and judge him by the 1945 situation that he was looking at. Same in 1963 when old JFK, Mr. Womanizer himself, well, bing! And then you had another Johnson, but he did not turn out to be Andrew Johnson. This was Lyndon Baines Johnson. He turned out to be a little better Johnson. And mind you, he didn't, unlike President Kennedy, he didn't use the Johnson, although he was Johnson. But he turned out to be a better president than Andrew Johnson, and one of the better presidents the Americans have ever had. Unfortunately, Kennedy had stuck him with Vietnam and the political doctrine that you had at the time. Dominoes, we can't have this country falling. And I don't know where they got that stupid doctrine, but he was stuck. So for the next 5 years, he did what he could. But, Vietnam was just a collar on his neck. Poor guy. And he knew his goose was cooked when Walter Cronkite said the war is lost, and so did Mr. Johnson knew his goose was cooked, and he went on national television and said, I will not seek and I will not accept my party's nomination for another term as your president. Yeah. And I totally agree with him. He was cooked. But you can't blame him totally for Vietnam. Richard Nixon went in there and he was going to Get rid of Vietnam. Yeah. Well, most of the 58,000 Americans were killed under Richard Nixon. That part you didn't know, huh? Yeah. Because he escalated Vietnam to levels unforeseen in 1969, 70, and 71. He had 500,000 Americans in there. Woo-hoo! And 10% of them ended up dead. Yeah, ain't that something? See what I mean? So you see, you've had good guys and bad guys as vice president. So here we are. Everybody says, well, what did Mike Pence do? Well, he did what a vice president's supposed to do. And what's Kamala Harris doing? What's she supposed to be doing? Nothing. It's a Biden territory. But Mr. Pence has not been put in the hot seat, and neither has Kamala Harris. So who are you going to vote for 2024? Kamala Harris? And if you vote for Mr. Biden and he happens to win 2024, what happens when he kicks the bucket? You have Kamala Harris. You ever realize that? Then you realize, okay, we got to go back in history and see how the second banana hit there. Are we doing the right thing here? Oh, boy. It's either a yippee, and you had very few of those. Johnson was one. Give him hell Harry was another one. And Teddy, he went on his own tirade. You know, he was his own man. He wasn't the Republicans or McKinley's man. He was Teddy. So you have those three to look at. This is your favorite alien today with a commentary. You Americans have a big decision to make, and boy, am I laughing because you won't get there to make that decision anyway. But good day. Good day.